home more frequently, and now they're forced to communicate, which they may not have kind of mastered communication in a healthy way. So you're starting to see that in maybe the parental unit. So with more separation and divorce, and mental health issues are coming up with parents that have been previously unaddressed. Incarceration, that has been a big issue. Emotional neglect, physical neglect, community issues, especially look at all the violence that's going on in the Little Rock area. And Little Rock School District has not been immune to that. I bet you North Little Rock School District has, and I'm not privy to a lot of that stuff. Pulaski County as well. So some of our local school districts are not immune to some of the things that are going on in our community. So not only do we have things going on in the home, but it's almost like an ecological approach that you can look at it. So you have the individual, and then you go out a little bit, you have the school and things are going on there. And then you go out more, individual, family, school, community, and even at large. Look at all the drama that we have internationally, nationally. So these kids are being hit from all different directions.
Absolutely. Charmaine, what other things, what else do you want to add?
So I mean, yeah, everything that Dr. Moore said, and then also just like for me, looking at the repeated cycle, like I work a lot more with adults. So seeing a lot of my adults who have adverse childhood experiences and how they have not healed from these adverse childhood experiences and then grown into adults, and seeing how that shapes them into their adulthood, whether that is them in their inability to have relationships, to form relationships, to their inability to be able to communicate, to their inability to be able to self-regulate and emotionally regulate. And then also seeing that create a universal cycle when they have children, and then they pass on those things again and again, and then seeing that cycle constantly repeat itself.
Absolutely. So I like what both of you all are focusing on, because it's like you're focusing on really on how everything's connected, right? So if somebody has experienced something in their childhood, one, how they can be in some ways carried on to the next generation, because it impacts how they parent, how they are or are not able to parent. And then that impacts at the family level. And then, as Dr. Moore is saying, even at the community level and then society level. So this can impact all of these different aspects of our community. When we talk about adverse childhood experiences, that's essentially what I'm hearing you all say. Then when we talk about abuse, maltreatment, these household challenges, everything that could happen in the households, especially with what we've been seeing since 2020 and in 2021, that these things have almost a ripple effect. They affect all aspects of our community, and they affect people as they get older. Because I believe, Dr. Moore, you were saying that these adverse childhood experiences, if they, like Charmaine says, go unhealed, right? People aren't addressing them and aren't healing from them. Not only can they turn into difficulties emotionally, but I'm also hearing you say even physically, that it can even manifest physically in people's bodies. Is that what you were saying?
Yes, absolutely. There's several research studies, and I have diabetes, so it was just interesting to see how they were able to track what happened and I guess as a child, and some of those experiences that individuals went through, and then how that kind of translates to health choices. And so it's a very interesting read, very, very interesting way of looking at how not only are these, because on surface level, we know that there's an emotional impact, but how there is a physical impact and then a lasting one. Because how do we ask our parents, right, who've never had an opportunity to learn or to do some of these things, such as communicate in an effective manner, not bait their child maybe, or how to support them in schools if they've never been taught.
Right.
They've never been taught or given the opportunity to do so. So, and then let me just say this, how do we expect the kids to learn We say that almost every day. Like it's almost like putting out fires. And I know I'm jumping ahead, that there's so much going on, and we want them to learn, and we want them to get at least meets expectations on the standardized testing. You think they're thinking about that? And they don't have a place to stay, water's cut off, gas off, or they just been abused? I'm not thinking about that. So it's been really, really tough. It really has.
Absolutely. So it seems like both of you all are seeing even before COVID, because some of this conversation that we're having is just dealing with trauma and adversity anyway, even without COVID. This is what we were seeing as providers and as therapists, right? Like people struggling, kids struggling in school, because like I say, how can they even be available for learning? Or even for that matter, how can teachers be available for teaching? How can any person be available to work, to go to school, to do anything when it's so much stress and adversity that our bodies and brains and emotions are dealing with? Yeah, that's very important. What have you all seen this being, if we even think about right now with 2022, right? Because with this Mindful Minute conversation series, we've been talking about navigating COVID since like May 2020 when we started. But what do you all think makes this time, like 2022 now, like even more challenging? I don't know if you all have seen that, like where it's just like, okay, we've been at this for 2 years. What are you all seeing as unique challenges that children, adults, and families are having now?
Keyword: exhaustion.
Exhaustion.
From all around, from teachers, parents, even the kids. They are literally exhausted because at one point we were done, right? And then Amarion came on the scene, and then the other Decepticons in various forms. I love Transformers, so I can go on and on. But those different things, it's almost like as it was about to scab over and putting cocoa butter on it and about to go away, it's like ripped it right back off, right? And it's having to heal after every single time. And yes, I understand that people make decisions about the schools and that hasn't closed down, but you don't think that switching back to virtual, shifting to virtual, I've had kids tell me this, it re-traumatized them. They thought that they were going to be locked up again. And quote unquote, that's what the kiddo said. And I said, well, I can almost guarantee the whole schools won't shut down, but I can see how you feel. Like they thought it was over. They thought they were in the clear. They did everything everybody asked of them. They got their vaccination. They got their booster. Still getting sick. Still shutting down. What's going on?
Yeah. So someone like it felt a lot. So for the children and maybe even the teachers, right, the educators in the school system, everybody thinking certainly it wouldn't feel like it felt in March and April 2020 again, or even in August when school started back. But what we're seeing is that some people 2022 felt like this flashback. Like, are we going back? Charmaine, have you been seeing it even with your teens, adults? Have you been seeing some of those challenges?
100%, like the same thing that Dr. Karen said. It's like almost like re-traumatizing, and then like she said, we're all exhausted, and then like the top of the level is that like we're all confused on like what can we do, what are we supposed to be doing, and then it almost feels like the blind leading the blind sometimes, because we think that we're doing what's right, and then we watch the news and they say something, and then like we follow that, and that's like, no, that ain't right. So it's like, we're all confused, and it's hard, even like, for us as like, for us in this profession, that like, I can't be on the outskirts. Like, yes, you're going through that and that's hard. I'm like, honey, I'm confused too. Like, you exhausted? I'm exhausted. Like, my teens are like, Charmaine, I think that like, I don't know how many teens that I had who like were failing their classes because they could not sit there and stare at the screen all day. And I was like, you know what? I get it, because I'm struggling to stare at the screen all day. So like, like that feeling too of less like we're all exhausted. We're all just like, in this together in this sense, and then being re-traumatized to feel like, yeah, we're coming out of it, masks are coming off, people are going back to normal. And then it's like, that like trauma reaction of like, wait, you mean we going back? Like, that's scary. I don't want to go back to what we were already going through.
Yeah. Well, and feeling like it's still happening, right?
Yeah.
Like we don't want to, and it's still happening. So those are tough emotions to have at the same time, exhausted and confused, and trying to maintain hope.
And I think that it was, for me, it's really, really hard for a lot of my clients who did not understand when I'm explaining to them that you're literally having a trauma response to this situation. And they're like, nah, that's not what's going on. And I'm like, yeah, that actually is what's going on. You're having a trauma response to a situation, and you're having anxiety now, and you're becoming depressed about the situation, and you're like hyper aroused to all these things, and it is literally a trauma response. And it feels weird to certain people, especially like my clients who have never identified them as anyone who has any kind of like mental feelings, and it's like, no, that's what's happening to you.
Yeah, so having to give people language for it. Yeah. So maybe both of you all can kind of address this a couple of words. So when we talk about a trauma response, how would you all describe that? Like, how would you explain? What would that look like or feel like to people? You think a trauma response? And both of you all both may have kind of different words for us. If you could both give your take on it.
Yeah, I think that for me, in the regards to this, it is that hyper arousal feeling. It's that feeling of whatever kind of reaction that has you nervous or scared for something that has already happened to you previously. So something happened to you that you were not emotionally or mentally ready for, and it scared you. It made you nervous. It made you start checking both ways before you did stuff, and then actually having that reaction later on out of fear of this thing happening again.
So I'm hearing you say nervous, anxiety, so it can manifest that way when you say a trauma response. Somebody feeling anxious, nervous, they'll feel that, and even outside of the situation. So maybe something reminds them of a thing that happened before, and they're feeling now anxious and nervous and worked up. So kind of that hyper arousal, maybe kind of worked up and on edge. Okay. Yeah. Karen, what else are you seeing with that when you kind of think about people having a trauma response?
So exactly what Ms. Beasley was talking about, but they're beginning to kind of, and that's part of it, overgeneralize. So anything remotely similar to the previous situation, it doesn't even have to be fully that particular situation or that particular trigger that caused that arousal, that hyper arousal that Ms. Beasley was referring to earlier, but anything remotely reminding them of that. You're starting to get people who are now having functional limitations, right? It's beginning to impact their ability to be social.
Yeah.
I've known individuals who were extroverted now have become introverted. It impacts their ability to maybe work with others. They don't like being around other people like they used to. They're really thinking about where they're going, how they're moving, who's around them. They're thinking about maybe someone, and almost like a paranoia that other people are doing things purposely to try to hurt them. And again, I think it comes back from just all maybe previously what they've experienced, but over the past 2 years, what we've been going through.
Absolutely. So I feel like what I'm hearing both of y'all say when we kind of put it together with a trauma response is that, one, it affects us physically. Like we can maybe even, because for some people experience anxiety, they can feel it like butterflies in their stomach, shortness of breath, like you can feel anxiety, that tension, that tightness, like feeling it in their bodies, like really an anxious, nervous. And then Dr. Moore, what I'm hearing you say too, and really we think about this with a trauma response, is it changes the way we think and feel. Like we find ourselves feeling maybe certain emotions more intensely than what we had before, like more sadness, more hopelessness, whatever it is, more anger. like you said, confusion, some of those feelings are more intense and harder to handle, and then it starts getting in the way. So that's what,
Irritability, I'm seeing lots
irritability.
of that.
Mm, that's probably the biggest one. That's probably the one to start with. Irritable. Folks getting on your nerves. They're like, that's getting on your nerves. They're like, what's wrong with
Wait a minute,
everybody
they
getting on
was
my
just
nerves?
breathing, baby. They was just breathing. That's
Just
all.
breathing. That's it. And just mad. Mad at the breathing. Yeah. But those are the things that can happen though when we talk about that arousal. Just more worked up. There's more just going. We're going on the inside and having a hard time relaxing, not being able to relax. Yeah. Yeah. Those are all the things that I think we're seeing more. Yes, Charmaine, were you gonna add?
I think that it's definitely like, and even like, going into that, into like those like the irritable moments, and then like talking about like, even like the social factor of
Right.
some of the trust issues that have been exacerbated. We're talking about some of the fights that have been caused from like being vaccinated and not being vaccinated, and like kind of like Dr. Moore was saying about like, everyone's out to get me. like it's like deliberately because of me that you aren't going to get vaccinated, and like, why I can't be around you because you're not vaccinated, you don't wear a mask, like, and I've had a lot of clients that are having like family fights about this. Well, y'all don't wear masks and y'all ain't vaccinated, so we can't come around, or like, and all of these different, well, we wear a mask, but like, y'all still getting it. So it's like, the conflict and the tension that it's also causing too, in the midst of like, the sides that people are picking, and all of that as well as well.
I'm so glad that you brought that out, Charmaine, because I think it kind of goes back to what Karen, you were saying earlier, that a lot of the way this trauma and adversity that we're seeing it come out can be how it affects the individual, right? But then when we go out to another level, what you're bringing in, Charmaine, is then now how it affects relationships and families and how people are getting along. So let's kind of shift to that conversation, because I think that's a good conversation. And I'm wondering if some of that, as this goes on, if conflicts are continuing to happen in a certain way within families, right? Where in the beginning it was there, but now the fact that these kind of conflicts and differences are now been there for like 2 years almost. How are you all encouraging people to like navigate this and handle it when it's these major conflicts, right? Like somebody in the family say, yes, I'll get vaccinated. Yes, I will. And then somebody like, no, don't come to my house if you're not, like, it's really creating some conflicts. How are you all encouraging people to navigate that and handle that?
For me, I always just focus on people focusing on the boundaries that are going to be able to work for them, and being able to recognize that it's not always going to be the same for their entire family, unfortunately. And yeah, it sucks, and it's hard, and like, it could cause problems and all those things. But if you're uncomfortable, then you're uncomfortable, and you still have to do what's going to be able to like do what's best for you.
Okay. So
yes, and I do the same thing. I encourage people to, which is it's kind of hard for a lot of people when, especially if they're very family oriented and they've always done things together. They've always been on one accord on most issues and most things, and then something like this kind of causes some divisive conversations and communication, and you have strained relationships. I just encourage people to think about what is, I encourage people to think about the relationship and the value of the relationship that that particular relationship has in their life. So there's levels to it. I always tell people there's levels. So this one, I'll never forget when I was going through some things with the loss of my stepfather. I had this counselor tell me about balcony people. And she had me think about an auditorium, right? The most expensive, most coveted, most exclusive seats tend to be in the balcony, and they're very limited in number. Not everybody deserves to be a balcony person. Those balcony people have access to your heart, right? And to you and your space and your spirit and things like that. They're very limited in number. And sometimes we all want to put everybody in the balcony, and they don't belong there. There's levels to it. So just helping people kind of work through things like that.
Mhm.
I love that. I love that. I also try to focus on telling people to, and even though it feels personal, that most times it's not personal. I don't really think that you have most people in your family who were like, I'm intentionally doing this because I want you to hurt. That's not normally what's happening. Like if you guys have had a good relationship before this, so focus on their why. And their why is normally not to hurt you, even though it's a difference in opinion. If we can focus on our relationship, we can have a difference in opinion and just keep my boundary of us doing Zooms or meeting somewhere outside, whatever we have to do, but not taking it personal to where the relationship becomes damaged because of this.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's very practical and concrete, but it seems like what you all are both saying is it starts at a mental decision to remember what is it that you value and just remember that.
And then kind of like we said earlier, like looking at sometimes when we do have those adverse experiences, we don't always know how to have those conversations. So like, the communication starts to go haywire because we can't sit down and just like talk like this. It becomes an attack, and now we fighting, and now we have destroyed a relationship over something that did not, need to be destroyed in this manner.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like it's very important. So it sounds like skills come in there too. So people have to learn. If you don't know how to have a conversation because of whatever, if you know that's a challenge, it's like talk to somebody, talk to a mental health professional, a trusted friend, somebody, figure out a way to maybe learn the skill of having those conversations, but it really starts at knowing what's most important here. And if you value the relationship, how to value the relationship over being right, it almost sounds like you're saying. So you don't have to agree, but how to keep a relationship intact when there's disagreement. Yeah. How does that apply? Dr. Moore, if you could address this when it comes to the schools. I don't know what you're seeing with teachers and educators, because I'm wondering if that same principle applies to coworker relationships with educators, right? And with, in that school context. So if you could kind of talk about what that looks like in schools to value the relationship.
I must say, I am not privy to a lot of conflict in between staff members. I think because one is just a shortage of staff. And so they're more focused on trying to take care of the babies. Like when the Amarion, and I know it's Amaricon, I just can say Amarion. Thank you. When that virus hit the Little Rock School District, there were so many kids and staff that were out, where you literally had staff members covering classes that was not in their area of expertise, just to have a warm body there. I think I almost feel like they ain't got time to have beef with each other. Because there's so many things going on. And I was in 2 different schools today. And when I tell you, it was fire after fire after fire after fire with the kids. I probably have not seen some of the the cohesiveness between staff members work together to take care of these kids in a long time. And that's very encouraging. Now, what goes on when Dr. Moore leaves and nobody tells me, but everybody works together to take care of the kids, as far as I know. So that's encouraging. That's encouraging. But there is lots of stress because schools are very shorthanded, like everybody is right now. That puts the stress on them. I don't think they got time to look at somebody crazy.
Yeah.
I will say that I have a lot of teachers on my caseload, and they are irritated with each other. But I do think it's just like the short fuses. They're all irritated. They're all overexhausted. So when they come at the end of the day to meet for the session, they're just like, we're tired. And so-and-so was getting on my nerves. So-and-so was not pulling their weight. But it normally is because so-and-so was exhausted too. So now this person's snapping on kids, and now you're over there trying to not snap on kids. And
I'm so glad they got you to talk to. They hide it real well, but I'm glad they got you.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, it sounds like it's a both and situation, like it's both, like you all are both seeing people stressed, tired, exhausted in our schools. We know this is happening everywhere, but right now we're really thinking about the schools and our educators, that they're tired, they're exhausted, they're stressed, they're putting out fires here and there. And it's like they're really, really trying to not snap on kids and not to let that spill over to the kids. So trying, even though it's difficult, it's probably exhausting to not do that. I'm pretty sure that's an exhausting thing, to even try to maintain your composure, which is it's a necessary thing, but an exhausting thing. But I'm glad to hear that you're seeing, Dr. Moore, as well, that some of them really are trying to come together as a school family, because that can be very helpful when people are really trying to deal with adversity, is how can you come together and really support each other.
And
Yeah.
then, and maybe it's just the schools that I'm at, but these schools tend to be kind of high needs. So they're struggling
Yeah.
dealing with just what the kids are dealing with.
Yeah.
So that kind of compassion fatigue,
Mhm.
or they call it vicarious trauma or secondary
Mhm.
trauma is what they also refer to that as. But
Mhm.
I hear a lot of, oh my gosh, I just don't, I'm tired. I don't know what to do. I feel like I can't, I'm not as effective as I used to be. When I hear those kind of terms, those words, those kind of buzzwords, as I call them, I know that they're getting close to the fatigue stage.
Right. Absolutely. I'm glad you said that, Karen. Like, I'm actually, so part of what I do sometimes is working with schools to help them become what we call trauma informed, to be aware of trauma, educated about trauma, and know how to be responsive to it, not just with the children and families, but with themselves. Right. Because I feel like part of what we're talking about is how our helpers and educators are also exhausted. That's what makes this a unique time, right? Is because educators and helpers like nurses and physicians and mental health therapists, like it's been a lot of helping and pouring out over the last couple of years. It's been, I mean, even before that, but definitely in these last couple of years. So people are exhausted and tired. But one of the things in my reading is exactly what you were saying, Karen, is that when we talk about burnout or compassion fatigue, one aspect of that, literally when people measure this with rating scales, is people starting to feel less effective. Like they feel like what I'm doing is not working. They're not having that sense of accomplishment or achievement. And exactly when you were saying that, those buzzwords like exhaustion and not feeling confident and effective anymore, those are huge parts of burnout. Those are definitely signs that people are starting to really burn out and getting fatigued with what they're doing.
And I get it. I mean, I threatened to go to Walmart myself and work. Just give it all up. I feel like if I can't do a good job, I'm not going to do anything at all. But I realized that's ridiculous for me to think that way, because at least they have something, you know? And so I think I try to help teachers realize that they're being effective just by their presence. You know, you don't have to feel like you have to solve every single issue that's brought to you. You're not alone, but just your presence. The kids know they have a steady presence there. That works wonders.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's almost, we want to just sit with that one for a moment, right? Because I think, and even though it makes sense, Karen, I really think, I'm pretty sure you all, because I saw you shaking your head, Charmaine, like, yeah, like we all have felt at some point, like, man, is this helpful? Is this effective? Like, what am I doing? You know, so I think it's normal and natural to have those thoughts, even though we try to like kind of shift our thinking into a different space, but it's like, it's normal and natural to have that. And I'm pretty sure a lot of educators have been having those thoughts as well, just like, what am I doing here? So it's helpful to know, like, even though I can't solve every problem, right? Even though I can't control all of what's going on right now, what I can do is be present. Right. That's awesome. So people knowing that has power in and of itself, to be consistent, caring, this present person who's trying to develop relationship. Relationship is so powerful. Yeah. So kind of to keep that conversation going about relationship, I know, Charmaine, kind of in preparing for this, one of the things that you said that you had seen is people really struggling with how to maintain those connections. Like they wanted to, but maybe other people aren't being maybe as cautious as they are regarding like safety and mask wearing and that kind of thing, but they still want to stay connected because that's what everybody's been talking about, right? Like how to stay physically, 6 feet apart or physically kind of distant, but still socially and relationally connected, right? And present. So how have you been encouraging people with that who's been struggling with how to maintain those connections and that kind of that push-pull?
So give me 1 second, my dogs are barking.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, we'll let you do that. If she's doing that, yeah, Karen, if you want to kind of say, I don't know if this has come up for you as well, just how to help people maintain connection during this time.
I think we have to be very mindful that there's, as my grandmother used to say, there's more than one way, or let me skin this cat, because I'm telling her how to do it. She didn't, let me just say for the PETA folks, my grandma really didn't skin no cat, I promise. And I didn't give her a dime. She said, okay, I give you a dime to hold the tail, like, but in other words, there's more than one way to do things. So there's more than one way to be social. We're some of the most creative folk on this planet. We really need to start thinking outside the box and how we can stay connected. And I think what has helped me is getting connected to a Bible study with like-minded individuals. And we do that virtually. So if they cough and don't cover their mouth, that's on them, But we've just found different ways to do it. I have to find, I wanted to align myself with people who make me feel good. Life is already something that is hard in and of itself. So I try to surround myself with people who make me feel good. And I encourage everyone to do that, however you do that, whether, and don't be so, I guess, tied up into thinking you have to know this person for ages and ages. It's people I've just met and have been very encouraging because we share, we're like-minded. We share the same kind of ideas about spirituality or things like that. So be open to new experiences. And this is something I wrote down because I wanted to share this today. I always tell people I cannot guarantee anything except one thing. And they're like, oh my gosh. And I hype it up. I said, I can 100% guarantee this one thing. They're like, oh, for real? Like, we finna go get us a lotto ticket. Okay. So I said, change. I can 100% guarantee that you will experience change. And so get used to it, beautiful. Get used to it. And how it's we have to be mindful to not make permanent decisions to temporary situations. So a lot of the things that we're going through is temporary, and we have to stay focused, stay prayerful, if that's your thing. Stay grounded, stay centered, and always keep in mind that change is going to happen. But how do I respond to it is what really shows your true colors.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great. I just want to highlight a couple of things that you said. You're like, hey, first, know. It sounds like in order to connect with like-minded people, people have to get to know themselves, like know what's important to you. It's almost like do some kind of self-awareness stuff and really kind of take a moment, just a few minutes, take some time there. What's important to me? What are my values? What would be great? What I enjoy talking about? What are my likes, my dislikes? And then connect with people. That's what you're saying. I like how you said like-minded. Connect with people where you share similar beliefs, ideas, and values. And it's almost like do you find, Karen, like that could be like satisfying, fulfilling, like even in the midst of a whole bunch of like foolishness around you, that if you can connect and had a connection with someone like-minded, like that could still be fulfilling in the midst of chaos.
Okay. Because they don't suck my energy dry, right? Because remember, from the get-go, I surround myself with people who make me feel good. Not feel horrible about being who I am, or judgmental, or anything like that. They recognize I'm a flawed person. They're flawed too, and we in this together.
And we in it together. I love it. Yeah. It's like they can celebrate you. They acknowledge the flaws and still be able to celebrate. All right. Yeah, good. Well, I want to let Charmaine chime back in. Is the doggy still
Yeah,
want
sorry
to
about
talk?
that, guys.
Okay, no, you're good.
Sorry.
You're good.
I
Yeah.
knew it was going to happen too. But I definitely agree with what Dr. Moore was saying in regards to I think a lot of times that it is an education process about like,
Right.
you know, being about, you know, being innovative. And then also talking to my clients about, in all honesty, it's almost a grief process too, because the life that we knew previously has passed in some ways. And for a lot of people who are extroverted, it was really hard. Like me, like, you know, I love concerts and I love being around you know, my friends, and like, you know, being able to go out, and people will like, you know, would have like Zoom parties. That's not the same. Like it's not the same. Like, you know, meet my friends in the parking lot, like, you know, they over there and I'm over here. That's nice, but that's not the same. It's not the same actually, like, you know, being able to see people and like, you know, hug necks and like, you know, being able to be in crowds and all of those things. So like, you know, there is a little bit of a grief process to like this we can be innovative, but it also, yeah, it's hard. And I dealt with a lot of my clients who struggled with that feeling of just like, I am struggling with who I am as a person because I'm not being able to do these things that I was like, you know, once able to do. And then sometimes like, you know, not even having just like close relationships, but I have a a lot of clients who like don't always like, you know, talk to people, but like hang out with people. So like, it's like, you know, moving the hangout context. It's like, okay, well, now what do I do? Like, you know, quarantine was cool at first, for those like in the first couple weeks for all of us who was like tired, like, yeah, this is cool. I'm catching up on all my shows. But after like, you know, a month of being in the house, we were like, okay, so now what?
Yeah. So now what?
After we've like, you know, binge watched all the shows on Netflix and we're still not going nowhere. So it is like hard to find that balance of like what, like figuring out what life looks like now, but also grieving what life was before.
I think that idea of like grieving is important, because I think with coming on the 2 years, I think we kind of know like, all right, like I think it's an acceptance process to, right, of getting to realize this is something we're going to have to adjust to. It's not just going to somehow be back. And I think it's some people that's for a long time, maybe even throughout a good part of 2021, were kind of thinking something would get back to normal. I don't know if you all, but I feel like I haven't heard that language as much, you know, as 2021 went on. Not like when things get back to normal, but I think people are realizing that's not the case. It's like, how can I accept the losses? Things are not the way that they were. How can I accept that? And now how can I create a life for myself within what's going on that works for me?
I think that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, babe.
I was gonna say that I think that one of the hard parts about that is that seeing certain people who are not living that life. Like I don't like, you know, we actually turn on the TV sometimes and we see full outside festivals and we see like full, like, you know, sold out concerts, and we're just like, so y'all just out here living life. Y'all out here doing all the stuff that I'm grieving that I used to do. And y'all just out here partying and like on the beach and like no mask and just living like nothing's happening. And like, that's kind of hard too to go, hey, well, I kind of want to do some of that stuff too, but like, you know, in my heart, I know it's reckless. So, you know, seeing that too, that some people are not living lives that are, you know, in a pandemic life. They're living life like nothing's happening.
But I would argue that they've been doing that's been going on since the beginning of time. People gonna do things the way they want to do it. But one thing that, just to piggyback on what Miss Beasley was talking about with the grief, just like how we grieve the loss of a relationship or a loved one, it's really not stages. The new research is coming out that they don't recognize that as stages anymore, because we go back and forth through these phases. So just when we got to this acceptance phase, right? At the end of 20, here go Amarion. And then we, you know, Where the anger, the denial, no, that ain't true. They lying to us. I'm not wearing a mask. And then you get sick. I think we keep going back through these stages trying to negotiate what's going on and doing the best. People are doing the best they can. And I get it. I get it.
That's because I think the thing is, and we've talked about this with this Mindful Minute conversation series the whole time, this idea that we're all collectively in this. So we can get it because it's our experience too, right? Like everybody is going through this. And I like how you said, Dr. Moore, it's like we're going through these stages. And I think that's what's unique about now with 2022, right? Is when we were getting probably close to the end of 2021, actually getting to a different place, accepting something, getting some stability with how we were living life. And then things really did when the surge happened in January, right? It may have happened at different times for different people in different parts of the country, but largely when that surge really took place, it was like, and it felt like, 2020 again. So it really shifted some things with where we were with that grief process. So that may be a practical tip for people to think about, is have people thought about it that way, like a grief process with loss and loss of relationships and acceptance and all the feelings that you meant, exhaustion and sad and mad and confused and every single thing. Now this ain't happening, denying it, boy, well, now it is, let me go on and accept it. And, just all of those different things. And it's exhausting going through that. Yeah. Any other, because I know we're kind of getting down to the time there, but I'm wondering, I just kind of want to review some of the things that you all have shared and want to circle back. I'm kind of really something that's standing out that Charmaine said earlier. You talked about not being healed. So I'm wondering, for anybody out there who has struggled with adverse childhood experiences, trauma, and now everything that we've talked about with COVID on top of that, and they even knew before the pandemic that they were unhealed. It was still stuff that they hadn't dealt with, some childhood traumas. What do you, Charmaine, and then I'm going to shift to you, Karen, what do you recommend people to do if they take from this? Wow, I'm having a stress response. Wow, I have some unhealed stuff. Well, what can they do? What do you recommend?
For me, I think that one of the first things is to not be defensive about it. Just to accept. It doesn't mean that anything is like that. I mean, it's adverse, but it could have happened to any of us. It did happen to majority of us, whether intentional or unintentional. I think that you can come across a lot of people who don't want to admit that anything is potentially wrong or anything is going on. And just being open to that self-awareness, being open to that self-reflection, and then going and seeking the services to actually explore that deeper for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like how you're saying it. It takes that acknowledgement to kind of say, hey, something happened in my life that's still impacting me. Maybe something is happening now specifically with COVID, of how this has affected me over these last 2 years, but maybe even something before COVID, just acknowledging that things happened and now I'm prepared to do the work to heal.
Yeah, take inventory of your relationships, take inventory of your behavior. It's not always everybody else. It's sometimes it's us.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, Karen, what else would you add? What would you recommend people do?
From a school-based standpoint, most districts have mental health agencies that come into the schools. Okay. So if there are any parents that are there, even out there listening this evening, or even teachers, utilize the staff that you have, such as your counselor, but they see which agencies service the district, and then you can make a referral to get that kiddo and even that family, because part of being in these schools, and especially if the child is on Medicaid and that agency takes Medicaid, there has to be a family component. You have to be able to involve the family. So if they're kids, they should already be doing that anyway, in my humble clinical expertise opinion. But yeah, you need to be working with the family anyway. But I am one of many agencies in the Little Rock School District. And I know North Little Rock, I've seen I think they have about 8 agencies. Pulaski County Special School District should have that too. So you're not alone, and just letting people know that parents, teachers, principals, whomever is listening, you're not alone. And then just utilize the staff that you have at your school, and then call on those mental health agencies to assist you with taking care of those kids and families.
Okay. I'm glad that you highlighted that there are resources within the school, is what you're saying. They can connect with people like a counselor, the principal, vice principal, somebody should know.
If there's transportation, see, that's the beauty of having school-based. They do it right in the school. So while the child is already there, they can take care of seeing that baby as many times as their needs necessitated. So yeah. I bet a lot of families didn't know that, but yes, there's school-based mental health agencies that can help your child.
Absolutely. That's good to know. And just one thing that I just want to plug in with working with the schools, one thing that I've noticed, which is great, is a lot of the directors and administrators and principals out there, they really, they're people too. And even though they're being pulled on and they're experiencing the adversity of this time, because like Dr. Moore said, short staff. So this puts a lot of pressure and demand on our principals and administrators to figure something out, right? And to figure something out quickly. But one of the things that have stood out that I've really have just been impressed by is how these administrators are really attentive to, and they care about the wellness of their staff. They really care about staff wellness. They really care about the staff feeling supported and appreciated. And during this time, and I really feel like they're doing the best that they can. And I know probably not all staff feel that way all the time, that they're being heard and seen and appreciated. And I do think there are some administrators out there who are really trying their best to promote self-care, promote employee assistance programs. So if anybody, this is not just the schools, wherever you are in any employment setting, I'm hoping that they have something like an employment assistant program, or EAP. They might say EAP, where, what do you all found? I think they can get 6 to 8 sessions, maybe free of cost because of that.
Right. Well, I just worked with one that was 5 sessions, but that was per problem. So you identify one problem initially, 5 sessions, identify if there's multiple problems, you just list one at a time and go through it like that.
And Charmaine, you said you've seen up to 12 sessions.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I hadn't heard 12.
Yeah, 12. I got one right now who's on 12.
12. Okay. Wow. So people are utilizing this. So if anybody is listen, that's another resource that could be used, their EAP, and probably as HR, I guess their HR department, I'm sure would know about that, or their supervisor, whoever they would feel comfortable talking to, can kind of ask about EAP and how to get connected with that.
They can call their health insurance company. Most EAPs, that most health insurance policies have a mental health benefit, and the EAP may be part of that mental health benefit before they actually utilize the true mental health benefits.
Okay. Yeah. So
HR is a good place.
Okay. Yeah. So it's one way, HR supervisor, your insurance, some way you can figure out how to get connected with somebody that can be helpful. I appreciate you guys sharing your expertise. Of course, one last plug I give for the organization is the Arkansas Association of Black Psychology Professionals. So of course, we're on Facebook. So if anybody wants to kind of know, we try to keep up with the directory the best we can and kind of see who's out there. So if anybody is really wanting somebody who's a Black therapist and they want to know who's out there that looks like them, feel free to send us a message on Facebook, and we can do our best to connect you with somebody through that mechanism as well. Thank you both for being here tonight, sharing your expertise. I'm sure we could go on for a while talking about all of the difficulties we're seeing and giving people practical tools and resources to kind of navigate it. Any last kind of and specifically around practical tools and resources, anything that that you want to leave with the people about what they can do?
I don't know about y'all, but I've been on this music kick, this meditation music kick, and I didn't even know it was this many new artists out here, because I was just against all new artists. But there are there are some that are really, really good. And I have Spotify. You can find and you don't have to pay for it. Find something to tap into to help you kind of get more centered and grounded. Music does it for me. And I take a few moments in the morning. I just had some tea, but whatever, just to be in silence. I didn't appreciate silence until I became an adult. I really and I need that to get back to just people. I talk all day long,
Yes.
right? And so the silence helps me. That's when I meditate and I have my talk with the Most High and do whatever I need to do. So that helps me every single day to keep doing, get up and doing what I do every single day. So I think people have got to figure out what's going to help them to feed their spirit and their heart and their soul so they can continue to push forward, because we are a resilient folk. And so we just have to figure out how to continue to do so.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, Charmaine.
I mean, the same. I actually, those are my two too. Music and being able to unplug, like completely unplug and just like, be. I've learned that works for me, just being able to completely isolate sometimes. But I do tell people too that's not one, like, one size fits all, like what Dr. Moore was saying. Don't get frustrated if you do try yoga and it does not work for you. That may not be your thing. Keep trying until you find what it is that actually works for you, because there is something for everybody.
Do what works. It's like do what works, whatever that is. And just, I know as we're wrapping up, we do have one question. Basically, people saying that traditionally in the past, there's been a lot of stigma in the Black community about mental health. So they're kind of asking, are we seeing people who are less hesitant to seek help? Has that changed? I really think so. Just kind of anecdotally, just mean it's kind of what I've seen. I don't know what like updated research would necessarily say about it, but I've definitely seen there be a lot more conversation in the Black community, be it locally and just on the national platform, more of a national conversation among Black people about mental health, even like on Black reality TV shows, okay? Like just more of a conversation about therapy, Black men saying they're being in therapy, they're just being way more positivity about self-care, mental health awareness in therapy, period. So I do feel like that's actually changing pretty significantly.
I definitely think that we still have a long way to go, but I agree that there's definitely been a shift recently.
It's a movement. Yeah, maybe we can continue that conversation. Maybe that could be a part of something we can integrate in as we can continue these Mindful Minute conversation series. So thank you all again for being here, and hopefully those that have joined us will continue to join us every first Monday of each month. So next month on March 7th, we're going to be focusing on suicide prevention and the importance of early intervention in the Black community. So of course, we know there's been more of a national conversation about suicide recently. So we hope to be able to have a timely conversation next month about raising awareness about suicide in the Black community, thinking about prevention and ways to intervene. And so please join us again. That'll be March 7th at 6:30 on Facebook Live and Zoom. Thank you again, Charmaine. Karen, we appreciate your time. People are saying, well done, well done. Thank you for people who have joined for their first time. Thank you. All right, everybody enjoy their evening. Charmaine and Karen, if you could stay on this for a sec. All right, bye everyone.